our presentation screen for reference if we need to reference them during the reports from our reviewers, but I would just defer this portion of the review to our planning consultant to go through the findings in her report on the special land use. And then either during this item or the next one, which is the site plan aspect of this project, we'll have the applicant come up and make a presentation about the project, say a few things about it. And I see the applicant attending tonight. So I would recommend we go with our planning consultant first and then the applicant, and then the planning commission can discuss the special land use request.
Thank you, Director Power.
Thank you, Director Power. As it was summarized, this is a proposal to remodel the existing Meyer store and offer a pharmacy drive-through, a reconfigured garden center along with upgraded facade treatments for the entire building, and a remodeling of the existing gas station. You're all familiar with the site. It is located at the southeast corner of Tyler Road and Belleville Road intersection. Section 3.112C of the zoning ordinance does permit drive-through facilities accessory to a principal use as a special land use in the C2 Extensive Highway Business District. We have reviewed the proposal based upon the general and specific standards related to drive-through. In terms of general standards, will it promote the use of land in a socially and economically desirable manner? Now, the proposed use of the site is not significantly changing as it is an already developed site. Meyer is at this time in the process of upgrading their facilities across the state. As we have seen, they have done it at multiple other facilities, and now it's the turn of the Van Buren site store. Any impacts that will result from the addition of the proposed pharmacy are mitigated through setbacks, landscaping, screening, and architectural requirements, which I shall review when I do my site plan review later. With regard to is it necessary for public convenience at this location, this site is right off Tyler and Belleville Road in our core commercial district, which is the Belleville Road Overlay District. It is also the main commercial hub for the township, and as such, having a drive-through pharmacy would definitely be a convenience at the site. Is it compatible with the adjacent land uses? The site is already a supermarket and a gas station, and it is part of a commercial corridor, so it abuts similar commercial uses to the north, south, and to the west, and there is a huge detention pond to the east. So it is in a setting that is correct for the commercial use. Is it designed and operated to protect public health, safety, and welfare? The use does involve improvements to the existing internal parking lot, addition of significant number of landscape islands, which at this point of time is a necessity, and the garden center to accommodate the pharmacy drive-through. Several pedestrian-focused improvements are also included, which will actually enhance the public safety on the site and make it more accessible to pedestrians. Whether the site can be adequately served by public facilities without diminishing or adversely affecting public services to other uses. We don't believe the addition of the pharmacy drive-through is going to significantly have any impact on the public services that are already being provided to the building. The proposed use is not likely to cause injury to other properties in the neighborhood. While the site plan indicates an increase in the impervious surface area, the proposal shows an overall net gain of green space in the form of new parking lot islands. So while they're adding in some sections, they are removing a significant amount from the existing parking lot. So we would defer to any stormwater detention issues on the site plan letter to the township engineer's review. The drive-through pharmacy is within the provisions of the uses that require special approval and is in harmony with the purpose of the C2 district. And finally, the proposed pharmacy drive-through use is related to the valid exercise of the township's police power. Our zoning ordinance does not have any specific standards related to drive-throughs itself. It's only the general special land use standards. At this time, it would be our recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend to the Township Board of Trustees to grant special land use approval for the proposed pharmacy drive-through use to be added to the Meyer site located on Belleville Road. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Krishnan. This brings us up to comments from the applicant. If you'd had anything to say regarding this item, just step up to the podium.
Through the chair, this is kind of to the applicant. Mr. Armstrong, if you want, there's slides that show overall site plan, utilities, architecture and landscaping, if you toggle through those just up and down arrows there, it might help you to, it may or may not help you. Feel free to use those.
And just to warn you, that mic is really sensitive, so you've got to speak really close to it so it can get picked up by the speaker system.
Okay. Craig Armstrong, Elevatus Architecture, located at 111 East Wayne Street, Suite 555, Fort Wayne, Indiana, 46802. As it was explained, the drive-through is what we're talking about at this time. I'm trying to get to the drive-through plan so that you guys can ask any questions of me or Meyer, who's also represented here today.
And I did not include the close-ups on these slides, so there's kind of the front view and the
Understood.
overall.
Yeah, I was trying to do the plan where we had the pharmacy enlarged for you. So we do have the 8-car stacking requirements, and we are revising all of our drawings to make sure that we remove outdoor display sales areas, and we are adding portions of landscaping within that island to be in accordance with the the C2 zoning district. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have of the applicant.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, do we have any questions or comments from any of the commissioners regarding this item? Okay. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak on this agenda item? Director Power, anybody on Zoom?
Nope.
No one this evening? All right, well, that went a little quicker than I think we were expecting. So the board ready to take action on this agenda item this evening?
Mr. Chair, I'll comment that it was a very thorough report. I read it and my questions were answered. At this time, I would move to recommend to the Township Board that they grant the applicant, Mr. Armstrong of Elevatus Architecture, on behalf of the owner, Myers, Inc., the special land use approval to permit the construction of a drive-through addition to the store's pharmacy at the site located at 9701 Belleville Road, subject to the analysis, or based on the analysis, subject to any conditions found in the McKenna letter dated June 30th, 2022, and the letter of staff dated July 8th, 2022, revised. Is that correct, Mr. Power? Director Power?
The revised letter, let me check the date. It may be the 12th, but you can just refer to the revised letter from the planning director.
To the revised letter. Thank you, sir.
All right, we got a motion by Commissioner Jar. Do we have support for the motion?
Support.
And support by Commissioner Barr. Do we have any comments or discussion regarding the pending motion? All right, no comments or discussion. Could we please have a roll call on this agenda item?
Brian Kelly.
Yes.
Jeff Jar.
Yes.
Callie Barr.
Yes.
Sherry Budd.
The motion is approved, and it will be recommended to the Township Board. So that brings us up to our next item, which is item number 2, case number 22-006, Meyer, Inc. Pharmacy Drive-Through and Renovations for Preliminary Site Plan. And we have Director Power, would you like to start us with the presentation?
Yes, I'd be glad to. I will take an opportunity to mention that there was a minor change to our agenda tonight specific to this item, and then a couple of other minor items further down the agenda. But specific to this item, the request is for site plan review, and typically what we'll have is a 2-step site plan review process. The first meeting will involve a preliminary site plan, and then following an extensive engineering review, often involving Wayne County, there will be a final site plan. Throughout this project, we were not sure until a little bit later on whether those 2 reviews could be consolidated, because there is relatively minimal engineering design that was left to review at this point. So you do have a final site plan recommendation from the township engineer, And based on some recent clarifications from the applicant, the planning consultant may have some comments regarding whether it's ready for final versus preliminary site plan. So I just want to clarify in this item that the planning commission may approve both preliminary and final at the same time, based on the language in the zoning ordinance pertaining to the site plan review process. So depending on the outcome of this discussion, you may entertain a motion to approve preliminary and final site plan at this time. But otherwise, again, will just refer to the images of the site plan and the architecture on the screen, and I'll defer this over to our planning consultant and then our township engineer for their reports, and I can summarize the fire marshal's comments after that.
Thank you, Director Power.
Thank you.
Ms. Krishnan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As was previously summarized, this is the C2 Highway Business District. The grocery store and the gas station currently are principal permitted uses in the district, and the pharmacy drive-through just received recommendation for special land use approval. The site was constructed predating our Belleville Road Overlay District. It is our attempt that anytime one of those sites comes for new site plan approval, we try to bring it as much into compliance with the B-Rod district as is possible, and that's what we have done at this time. All of the minor required information for site plans is on the plan. The site has a total area of 39.33 acres. There are no minimum lot area or width requirements for this district. The existing building and the proposed addition to the gas station complies with all of the setback requirements. The maximum permitted building height in this district is 4 stories or 40 feet, and the proposed additions have a height of only 23 feet and 4 inches, so they are compliant. With regard to access and circulation, access to the pharmacy drive-through is to be provided via existing driveways of Tyler Road. Director Power, would it be possible to zoom into the pharmacy drive-through circulation route? So what the applicant is proposing is a horseshoe-shaped drive-through for vehicular access to the pharmacy service window with ingress and egress along the main access drive that comes off Tyler Road. To avoid conflicts with the existing drive to the north, the drive-through is a self-contained one-way lane with pavement markings and signage. Previously, the applicant had the island that is in between the horseshoe as an area for outdoor sales for their garden center, and that was not something we felt was a good design, because if you have flowers on display, people are going to keep cutting across the drive-through, which is not a safe way of doing it. So the applicant has since eliminated outdoor sales over there. It will just have some landscaping on it in order to just remain as a circulation route. With regard to sidewalks, the site does have existing sidewalks along Tyler Road frontage and along its Belleville Road frontage. The site plan also includes an existing sidewalk along the west side of the building, and the new area where the pharmacy drive-through is being proposed also has a sidewalk pedestrian connectivity. The crosswalks are also designated, and the barrier-free accessible spaces are also set in a manner that somebody in a wheelchair can also access the store reasonably. Based on the parking requirements for the gasoline station, which is based on pumps, and the size of the convenience store and the retail store, the site requires a total of 630 parking spaces, including 13 barrier-free spaces. What is proposed at this time is 860 spaces and 37 barrier-free spaces. It's way above the requirement. Our ordinance limits parking to no more than 20% above the requirement. This is at 37%. However, the site was designed at a time when more parking was considered better, and the old standards are basically a reflection of the time when you used to have day after Thanksgiving shopping, and every one of those spaces was taken. Shopping, retail shopping especially, has changed over the past decade, and dramatically so since the pandemic. As such, parking spaces are not needed in the quantities that they were previously thought to. So the applicant is eliminating a lot of spaces by putting in new landscape islands, but they still have a good amount of surplus. It's just a recommendation that in the future, if they develop the outlots along Tyler Road, they still have room to put in after Jiffy Lube. There is one more outlot there and possibly a second one. Instead of creating more surplus parking, they can probably have a shared parking agreement for those outlots to use existing paved areas already instead of building more parking. That's something we would suggest. 8 stacking spaces are shown for the pharmacy drive-through. Barrier-free accessible spaces are all ADA compliant. Now, the B-Rod district does require bike parking. Bike parking is based on the number of parking spaces. If you're looking at the number of bike parking spaces for 860 parking spaces, it would just be a little bit unrealistic to expect that many bikers to go to a grocery store and bike away with their gallons of milk. So the applicant has provided a reasonable number of bike parking spaces adjacent to each one of the entrances, and that more than satisfies the requirement. A smaller bike rack is also included for the gas station convenience store area for somebody who just quickly wants to go into that store. Landscaping and screening requirements. We have extensive design standards in our ordinance, including the B-Rod, and the applicant has attempted to make the site as compliant to the B-Rod District Greenbelt standards as is possible at this time. Some minor corrections. The outdoor display area is still shown as a remnant on one of the sheet sets, and it must be deleted. When the applicant was revising, it probably got left over. With regard to detention pond landscaping, although our ordinance has regulations, it is subject to whatever Wayne County finds acceptable, so we will defer to the township engineer. If the detention pond is okay, whatever landscaping proposed around it would be acceptable to us. Specific to the C2 district zoning, there is a requirement in the ordinance that so much square footage of landscaping needs to be provided for a set amount of building square footage. The applicant does have more than the required amount of landscaping for that. However, a breakdown of that area is what we had requested the applicant to provide. We want to know how much of it is in landscape islands, how much of it is possibly wetlands or other greenbelt areas, just to get the distinction. It's merely having to split up the calculations, and the applicant has indicated that they have no problem showing that information. A tree permit is not required because they are not removing any trees. With regard to lighting, there are existing light poles at the edge of the garden center that are going to be relocated to accommodate the drive-through. One will be placed at the northern edge of the pedestrian island and another near the entrance of the garden center east of the drive-through. In addition, a new fixture will be within the canopy above the pharmacy service window within the overhang area. Manufacturer's cut sheet details for proposed fixtures have been provided and they meet ordinance standards. They, however, do need to revise the photometric plan for the gas station. I know over the years, Commissioner Budd would agree, we have reviewed gas station canopy underlighting because some of them are just so incredibly bright. What is proposed actually exceeds what our ordinance permits, even though we permit a much higher intensity under the canopy. It's merely a question of adjusting the illumination of the bulb, the lumens of the bulb or the intensity, so that needs to be done and a new photometric plan submitted. With regard to architectural details, we have been going back and forth with the applicant on it. So overall, the buildings are comprised of brick and glass for the main building. The existing brick face on the north and south of the building are to remain, and new brick veneers are proposed for the center of the building. Originally, when the applicant submitted, it was just one mass of EIFS, and the B-Rod district does not allow EIFS as a primary building material unless used as an accent only. So they have significantly reduced the use of EIFS. The existing brick on the northern facade will remain and will be adjacent to the proposed brick veneer where the pharmacy drive-through is. The remaining existing block walls will be painted, and that is the color scheme. It's the general Meyer color scheme with the blue. With the blue, the gray, little bit of beige, and then their standard brick color. We had asked the applicant to present the color samples and material details, and they are on the screen before you. There is an existing trash compactor shown on the south side of the main building, and there is one dumpster on the east side of the gas station. It was just a dumpster, so the applicant is proposing an enclosure with gates in order to update it to current ordinance standards. There are several safety-related signs proposed on the site. These are all considered incidental signs and are permitted. Any wall signs mounted on the building will need to be submitted to Director Power and the Planning Department in order to get approved before installation. And decorative fencing details have been provided for the garden center and are compliant with the ordinance. The revised plan addresses most of our concerns. I had done this review letter prior to receiving Mr. Kamer's review letter where he's recommending final engineering. Typically, the most significant step between preliminary and final site plan review is engineering. If engineering is compliant at this time, I would have no hesitation in recommending preliminary and final site plan approval for the Meyer project at this time, subject to the 4 conditions that are listed in our site plan review letter dated June 30th, 2022. And these conditions need to be fixed on a revised set of plans submitted to Director Power for final administrative approval, just to make sure that they're all being met. I would be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krishnan. Mr. Kamer, I believe you're up for engineering.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Kelly. So we reviewed the most recent set of plans, which didn't change a whole lot compared to the last time that we reviewed these, but our comments and the applicant's responses to our previous letter are included in our letter dated July 7th, 2022. The new letter dated July 7th, I included the responses for those items and comments that we wanted to express to the Planning Commission and also to Director Power as our main concerns and how the applicant is responding to them. So I will quickly go over those. But in general, the site plan and the changes to the Meyer store are very minimal as far as utilities and engineering changes go. But I will go through those based on what we wrote in our letter here. So the first general comment that we listed is that soil boring information, including groundwater elevations, must be provided. The applicant has chosen not to do soil borings due to the lack of underground work because there is no underground utility work. The applicant has stated that a third-party inspector will be on site determining soil boring capacity, and that they have also acknowledged that the below comment that we had from our previous letter, which is ultimately the applicant's responsibility to determine soil boring pressure and capacity and groundwater for excavation work while performing will be their responsibility, and that the township inspectors have the right to require additional testing if results are not compliant when it happens. So there's very little underground work, so we don't see an issue with needing those borings at this time. The water main service, current GIS records and the applicant's plan indicate that there is a water main loop around the existing Meyer building, runs north and south and east and west around the project area. There's also an approved water main installation coming from or to the new Jiffy Lube Center, coming from the northwest quadrant, which the applicant has added to their site plan, even though it has not currently or yet been installed, but should be by the end of this year. The applicant's plan does not indicate proposed water main or water main connection to the exterior public water main at the gas station or the new Meyer building, so we have no further comments on the water main at this time. Similar to the sanitary sewer, the applicant's plan indicates that there are 2 current sanitary service lines to the existing building, one from the northwest side of the building and one from the southeast side of the building. Both service lines are connected to a private sanitary system on site. So the existing Meyer building has private sanitary sewers until they connect into what is the public sanitary sewer owned by the township on the south side of the building. The plans indicate that the existing service line from the gas station, which connects into the Belleville sanitary line that runs north and south along Belleville Road, will also not be adjusted at this time. So we have no further comments for the sanitary service or sanitary improvements at this time. When we looked at these plans, the biggest concern, and I think we talked about this the last time the Meyer building was, I think when we had staff level and previous planning commission notes, was for the storm sewer or the stormwater management on the site. The plans provided show the existing storm sewer network, which collects runoff from the main Meyer the main Meyer lot and the outlots to the west. And it's collected through a system that is diverted to around the north side and the south side of the building, which is then diverted and discharged into the existing detention ponds to the east of the Meyer building. The applicant's plans show slight modifications in the existing storm sewer system near the garden center or the new pharmacy loop. There are currently existing seepage drains or under drains that were there for the garden center, which the applicant proposes to remain in place. However, they will place small storm sewer structures on those seepage drains to collect any additional runoff from the pharmacy runoff or the new pharmacy area, drive-through area. The plans indicate that the work at the main building and the parking lots and the gas station building will result in a net change of an impervious area of 0 or actually negative impervious area. They're actually adding more islands, more green space to the existing system than is what is there now. Our first comment back when we had initial conversations with the applicant was there's been concerns within the township about the drainage or the detention pond to the east side. And really it's not as much as the detention pond, but everything downstream of the detention pond. So we asked the applicant to provide any information on maintenance or upgrade that they have done to the pond in current years. And after our initial conversations, the applicant has provided a stormwater restoration work narrative, which explains the restoration, the revitalization work that's been done to the existing pond. And this was done back in September of 2020. The work mainly involved removing, tree brush and reworking the outfalls and the outlets that go from their system into the existing pond. And essentially, we don't see anything that's not working correctly, properly as was originally designed with the pond. And we just have a note in here as our comment that the Meyer store will be continuously responsible for maintaining the functionality of the system if anything in the future does come up from this, but we don't see any changes per the plan submitted that would create a negative impact to the current stormwater system. Paving and grading, the plans provided show the existing HMA parking lot and the islands as currently configured. The applicant plans to resurface the area in front of the building with either a HMA overlay where they scrape off or cut off the top layer of the asphalt and replace it, or in areas where they're doing full concrete reconstruction in front of the building and the new facade. Other pavement modifications include the new islands where they will cut out the pavement, add new curb, and add new green islands. And then obviously the reconstruction of the pharmacy area, which will now be a concrete pad and looped area for the driveway. The first comment that we have on here, I wish to strike from our conditional approval. So there was a little bit of confusion in their grading plans where we just noted what we call like a bust in the grades. And what we thought was a bust is actually the bottom of a couple of steps coming off of the gas station. So there's no issue with shown there. What we would propose in light of our comment here is that the applicant at least acknowledge or show or note that there are steps coming off the west side of the doorway there on the south side of the gas station. The soil erosion and sedimentation control, the applicants have received approval from Wayne County for the soil erosion and sedimentation control plan set that they've submitted, and the applicant will be required to secure that permit from the county. It is approved, but they need to secure the permit before any work on site is done. With that and the minor or minimal changes to the underground infrastructure, Fishbeck recommends final site plan approval based on the engineering review for the Meyer store and addition and renovation project, subject to any of the minor comments that we had in our letter dated July 7th, 2022. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Kamer. Director Power, I believe you're going to go through the fire recommendation as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the course of this project, the fire marshal has reviewed the plans a number of times, and following a submittal that was received on May 13th, the concerns that had been stated at the planning staff review stage had been addressed. So the only comment remaining on the fire marshal's letter is that the Knox box required for Van Buren Township can be found at www.knoxbox.com. So a typical comment about giving Knoxbox access to the fire department. So the fire marshal's concerns have generally been addressed.
Thank you, Director Power. Mr. Armstrong, do you have anything you would like to share with us regarding this agenda item? Or any additional comments?
No, I do not have any additional comments. I'm just here to answer any questions. Like I said, I have the representative from Civil Engineering with us and a representative from Meyer with us as well. So if you have any questions for any of those entities, we're here.
All right, thank you so much. Do you have any comments or questions from any of the commissioners regarding this item? Commissioner Jar.
Ms. Christian, I know it was in the letter that the sign package has not been submitted yet. Is that, when will we expect the sign package?
Typically, applicants submit the sign package once the building permits are approved and they start their work. They put together a sign package, and most sign packages are done by an independent company that would turn in their.
I ask because in the elevation diagram, the Myers primary sign looks like it might be a little large. I couldn't, for our ordinance, I couldn't see a scale on it, but I was wondering if you had any comment about that sign.
Yes, we did not review the signage because the applicant put this, the signage that they've shown on the building in the elevations is merely considered as representative of how the building will look. So, good point. We make a note that the signs shown on the architectural plan are not approved in those dimensions and need to be permitted separately.
I think that was called out in your letter, actually, but I did want to bring it up, that the signs were maybe not quite set in stone at this time.
Yes. Maybe added to the recommendation point number 5.
Number 5, signs still require approval?
Yes, signs require permit and approval.
Mr. Kammer, sorry if I still have the
Yes, you
floor.
still have the floor.
Could you explain the condition that you wish to remove from your engineering letter about the, I didn't understand it. There was a grading problem in the gas station and they must include some steps? Sorry, I missed it.
No, that's not a problem. I can kind of explain. So in our letter, we typically, when we do an engineering review, we require the applicant to submit detailed grading plans. So making sure that all the ramps and everything around the building is correct. In our review, we noticed a couple of spot grades next to some other grades that were off by, appeared to be about a foot. So now this happens a lot when you develop plans. Sometimes numbers are transposed, sometimes the old numbers are on there. So we just made a comment that the applicant must verify these grades around the gas station building. After our letter was sent to the applicant, we got word from them that it's not necessarily a wrong. It's just that it was unclear in the drawings or in the grading plans that there are actually steps there. So when it showed that this grade was here and one was here, there weren't steps shown, at least on the grading plans. So to me, it just looked like they were wrong, whereas we got the explanation that there are steps there. So the 1 foot difference is essentially 2 steps down on the sidewalk. So we would just like the applicant to, on the grading plans themselves, just note or at least indicate somehow on the grading plans there that those are indeed steps, so that we don't have a contractor go out there and grade from point A to point B and it's a steep ramp versus steps. But those are typically handled in the detailed grades. So no issue with that comment, and I think it's resolved.
Got it, thank you.
Any other still have the floor.
I'll make a comment. I think it looks very nice. I like the elevations, and thanks for giving the color renderings. I don't know if that was, if you guys had a prompt for that, but we really appreciate those. It helps us share your vision. So thank you.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners or comments? So a question from the audience.
Could somebody explain just how the pharmacy drive-through is going to look? Are you getting rid of the garden center completely?
There is a side elevation in the packet. It doesn't have the window well drawn out on it, but I think it might help explain it.
Craig, I actually have more pictures here. I just hid them. They follow a loop adjacent to that north edge of the building, so they'll turn left into it from the north or turn right into it from the south. Is that right? And follow the loop. So I'll show. I have one image here that shows the.
Dan, it would help to point on the screen instead of using our north-south terminologies.
Yes, yes. You have the screen. You can look at this, and then I'll pull up a different image too. Let me try. No, thank you. Dan. You think this might help?
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question of the
Yes.
applicant?
Yes, Commissioner.
The
Jar.
garden center isn't being entirely removed, it's being reduced in scope, is that correct?
Yep.
Did that answer?
And Shorten, I believe also they're eliminating cash registers or checkout at the garden center as well, correct? Are you, you're removing the checkout from the garden center as well, or is that still gonna?
And
Okay.
The checkout's being relocated to be back still within the garden center. They're
Okay.
just moving it back.
So it doesn't interfere with the pharmacy? Okay, thank you.
This rendering might sort of paint a picture of it.
Explain a little. Do you have any other questions or comments from anyone in the audience this evening? Do we have anybody on Zoom, Director Power, with any questions?
No, we do not.
Everybody, the commissioners have feeling one way or another regarding preliminary and final at the same time, or any feeling? Commissioner Jar, you have another question?
It sounds to me like Mr. Kammer is in favor of preliminary and final. Sounds like Ms. Krishnan would be in favor of preliminary and final. I'd ask what Director Power opinion on that would be.
Favor of that as well, if everybody's comfortable with that. The zoning ordinance does allow for that.
It seems like everybody's kind of on the same page with this, so if we're ready to take action on the request, it would be for a preliminary and final, if a motion was.
Move to grant approval for preliminary and final site plan for the Meyer Pharmacy drive-through and gas station renovations at 9701 Belleville Road, based on and subject to any recommendations in the June 30th, 2022 McKenna letter, adding .5 that signs still require approval. The July 7, 2022 Fishback Township engineering letter, acknowledging that the grading plans would indicate that those are steps, as discussed earlier, and the May 17th, 2022 letter by the Van Buren Fire Department.
Thank you. Do we have support?
I support that motion.
We got a motion by Commissioner Barr, support by Commissioner Jar. Do we have any comments or discussion regarding the motion? Seeing as we have none, can I have a roll call, please?
Brian Kelly,
Yes.
Jar,
Yes.
Callie Barr. Sherry Bud.
Yes.
All right, and the motion for preliminary and final site plan approval is granted. Thank you for coming in this evening. The renderings, everything look great. We can't wait to see the project moving forward. Thank you. great night. All set, Director Power? All right. We are on to agenda item, our next agenda item number 3, Van Buren Charter Township Community Center renovation and additions final site plan approval. Director Power, if you would like to do an introduction, that'd be wonderful.
Yep, I'm glad to. And in this case, I'm taking over some of the typical detailed review that we would have with the planning consultant. So I'll be up here a little while, but probably not as long as I was up here on March 9th when we reviewed the preliminary plans. I would like to just give another refresher on what this project is, and then I'll go through some of the changes that have occurred between the preliminary and final site plan review stage, as well as accounting for the conditions that have been addressed since that preliminary stage. So just to kind of rewind and see where we're sitting today is the image on the left side of this screen. The existing Township Hall administrative offices and senior center and police department building. That is what you see on the left there. Notably, you see a softball diamond on the southeast corner or the lower right corner. You see a outline of a detention basin. It's called a dry detention basin on the southwest corner. And the building kind of makes a horseshoe shape. What the proposed addition entails is the addition of a performance area outdoors and the addition of renovation of about 13,500 square feet of the inside of the existing building, as well as the addition of 21,763 square feet of gross floor area, including a footprint of 16,411 square feet on the first floor, and then 5,352 square feet on the mezzanine, for purposes of providing a community center and site upgrades at our campus here at the township. So there's an extensive description, project description and use statement on the third or fourth sheet in the plan set. I won't go over all the details of the interior programming of the site. I can certainly go back through those, or I'm sure the applicant can. But I'll mention more about the exterior of the site. Again, there's a performance plaza, which is this area here. My cursor is not working, but this area here is a performance plaza, building addition to the north of it, and then an expanded detention basin, which I'll talk about shortly, to accommodate this variety of new uses. And again, here's the just close-up of kind of the area of the site in focus. And there's one other change I did not just mention, but I will on this screen. So in reviewing the changes that are proposed and in the development between the preliminary and final site plan stages of the design, a few changes should be noted in the plan set. One is that at the point of preliminary site plan review, we really did not have the complete detailed engineering of the stormwater management system for the site. And what we knew was that there is a what's called a dry detention basin that doesn't hold water, that serves generally the portion of the site you see in that large red bubble. And initially, the township engineer will talk about this more in depth, but initially there was a separate second pond proposed. And over the course of the engineering review between township staff and the design team and the township engineer, we guided this more toward a single detention basin design. So one of the main changes in the final plan set is the expansion of the existing dry stormwater detention basin and the removal of that second basin. Somewhat relatedly, in looking at the stormwater infrastructure that's involved in this step of design, there's some piping that will need to be constructed or altered near the south end of what's shown on the screen as the DPW yard. And in routing some of the stormwater through that pipe and then routing it through a stormwater quality structure in that area, there will need to be some minor modifications to the DPW yard as well as the fencing that lines the south end of it. And additionally, one of the other comments that came up in the preliminary review was that, or one of the main themes of that review really was the separation of the administrative staff parking area, and particularly the public safety personnel parking area with fencing. And what that did was provided some security benefits, which were validated by the police chief's letter that you received in your packet. But it also meant that in major events, there will be all traffic routing to the north end of the site at the main driveway on Tyler Road. And what you'll see here is that there's now an alternative design proposed that may come in with the final project construction that would have another outlet outside of that employee-only area. So there would be two means of egress and ingress if that part of the plan moves forward. So that's that bubble at the northwest corner or upper left corner of the screen. So that's just accounting for some of the significant changes. Along with these, there were some minor adjustments to where the landscaping would be installed, but that kind of speaks to the major changes. Since the preliminary review, there's kind of a wall of text here, but I will just note that a number of every preliminary site plan comment was addressed, but in the final design iterations, there were some additional comments that came up as part of these changes that I just mentioned. So just really briefly, the applicant provided all the conditions, which included a written statement regarding the public safety need for the isolation of the existing staff parking area. The Planning Commission was asked to and did approve the site's access configuration. There was discussion with staff about the snow storage area for the parking lot that has been addressed. The length of the Type B perimeter landscaping was clarified in this plan set, and the Planning Commission also modified the required green belt along the east edge of the site to account for that being an existing condition. The number of deciduous and evergreen trees around the perimeter of the building was corrected. There was a reversal of what was required in terms of flowering or ornamental trees and deciduous or shade trees that has been addressed. The staff and applicant will work together to credit trees that do not meet the minimum standards. If there are some slightly smaller caliper trees, we can work with the applicant to maybe increase the number if need be to account for those lower caliper trees. A detail of the proposed gate has been shown, and the height of the proposed gate and fencing is 5 feet in the details of the plan set. And finally, the Planning Commission at their meeting on March 9th did review the architecture of the building and approved the architecture of the building at that time. And that included more of a, as you'll see in the next image, more of a block and modern design of the building as opposed to peaked roofs that don't really comply with the existing character of the building. There's a shallow pitch to the addition, but it's not a fully peaked roof. Those changes were all addressed during preliminary review, but with the changes that I just noted here, there are some conditions in my report that respond to those changes. The first is that if the second driveway is selected, it will require Wayne County permitting because it is in Quirk Road, which is a Wayne County road. The changes to the configuration of the DPW yard, and I'll just say with a broad brush, will require coordination with staff and acceptance of staff, and there's already been some preliminary indication there's no issues here with relocating that fencing, consolidating some of the storage, and potentially removing some trees, one of which is dead. And so there are some minor issues pertaining to that adjustment to the DPW yard that will need to be addressed. And the proposed replacement fencing, if it needs to be built there, will be subject to review by the planning director. And finally, sort of a larger all-encompassing comment, the final pond design shall be coordinated between the applicant and the Township Department of Public Services to ensure the basin meets all aesthetic, operational, and stormwater design needs. And that's something that we're well far along on, and I'm sure the township engineer will speak to that as well. Just as a reminder of the aesthetic of the building, here's the renderings that were previously provided. I will be available for any questions. I'm not going to go through all the findings in my report again, because by and large, the plan is the same in terms of the number of parking spaces, the basics of the zoning, the basics of the use and programming that we spoke about in March. So I would recommend that the plans are ready for final site plan approval from a zoning standpoint. The project has very carefully been developed to be mindful of the zoning ordinance standards of the township. So I will recommend conditional final site plan approval to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Director Power. Mr. Kamer?
All right, thank you. Just as a brief overview, so initial final site plans were submitted back in May, and we took an initial look at them, and many of the comments that we had are addressed by the applicant, and their responses are here. Again, we left some of the more pertinent comments in the letter with the applicant's responses. However, at the time of that submittal, there were some items omitted that we typically would require for final site plan based on engineering review. So the applicant, then we discussed it with the applicant, and they have now resubmitted. And I will go over the main items that still either are outstanding or things that have changed, so that the Planning Commission is up to date with what has changed. And then, as Director Power mentioned, I will discuss a little bit on the stormwater, and I'm sure you may have questions. So if I go too fast, either stop me or we can discuss after the fact. As I said, the previous site plan and engineering plan was submitted and reviewed, but did not receive final site plan recommendation, as was outlined in our letter on May 20th, 2022. And the responses are in this letter. This may take me a minute, so bear with me. So under the general comments, we had asked the applicant to make sure that all easements are listed and shown on the site. To jump back a little bit, just so that the existing township site has been what it is for quite some time. So our goal in reviewing this was to get the township hall site up to current standards, both for the proposed and existing infrastructure. So we don't want to approve something and then 5 years down the road say, why wasn't that addressed at the time, right? So one of the first comments, we asked the applicant to research and add all the easements that are currently on the site, which they have complied with. We asked the applicant in their design to remove and replace pavement in a manner that will not deteriorate faster than it would. So there are certain aspects of the pavement removal and replacement that we've asked them to expand, so that we don't have small sections that break, so that anywhere that they're removing, it's squared off and it's a nice new pavement that won't break in the future, and they have complied with that as well. Moving to the water main service. Currently, the water main service, there's on Quirk Road and Tyler Road, there are water mains owned by the township that run north and south along Quirk Road and east and west along Tyler Road. The current township hall is serviced by a water main that comes off of Quirk Road and runs along the entrance between the DPW building and township hall. The applicant's plan is to tap a new service or new water main in the northeast quadrant along Tyler Road and wrap a new water main that comes down the east side of the building around the proposed community center, and then tap in or tie into the existing. So we will now have a looped system for the community center, for Township Hall, for the DPW building that will provide reliability and redundancy if there were ever a need to expand or if we ever had a water main break. With that comment, we have had some back and forth with the applicant about adjustment of the water main and where it runs for future maintenance, because in 20 years, when none of us are here, we want to leave it so that the DPW can repair and maintain the water main without disturbing or limiting the amount of disturbance to the public. And so the applicant has gone through and adjusted the alignment of the water main and provided a alignment that both we approve of and also the DPW water and sewer superintendent and director. We make a note of here about final hydrant coverage that must be approved for location, accessibility, and coverage by the Township Fire Marshal, which they have reviewed and approved. There are some minor comments about gate valves and locations in terms of where to relocate them, again, for future maintenance and accessibility. Other than that, we don't have any major comments on the water main, other than that they will need to go to Eagle to get the state of Michigan approval, and we will work with the applicant to get those submitted. The first, I guess, major issue or back and forth, I guess, we had with the applicant was with the sanitary sewer. The applicant has changed the location of the sanitary service multiple times due to there being a new service line from the community center. I'm not an architect inside the building, but from what I understand, there was no way to tap the sanitary service into the existing system, so they will be running a new sanitary service out of the community center. Again, just like the water, the sanitary service runs in between the DPW building and Township Hall. The applicant was looking to tie into the existing system with the least amount of disruption possible. However, their design initially submitted was not meeting township minimums and not meeting engineering minimums as far as slope and size. We worked with the applicant to essentially run further downstream so that they could tap into the sanitary sewer at a deeper elevation and then bring back new sanitary service from essentially Quirk Road back towards the community center. At this time, the applicant has met minimum standards for slope, for size, and really I think it's a much better, more direct path to get the sanitary service from the new community center to the existing service line that runs along Quirk Road. So we have no further comments on the sanitary other than when the contractor is on site, we want them to verify any inverts that they find. So inverts, essentially the depth of the pipe prior to tearing up the entire parking lot, just to verify what they found in the field is correct. Onto the storm sewer system. So the initial design of the community center, as Director Power mentioned, was they were taking what was new, containing it in a storm sewer system, running to a new detention pond, and containing or detaining the water and then connecting into the existing system. Over multiple iterations we had with the applicant and with township staff, it was determined that, like I mentioned earlier, the existing system wasn't running properly or doesn't work as, I guess, initially proposed to function. So the existing detention pond, and I don't know how many of you have been out there, the existing detention pond does not actually detain any water. It receives some runoff from the south from the splash pad, and it is supposed to detain some water from the existing parking lot. However, what we found out in talking with township staff is that instead of overflowing to the detention pond, it flooded the parking lot. the existing parking lot. So in talking with township staff and with the applicant, it was determined that we want to fix this and make it so that both systems are combined and then detain water and function properly. So with the updated layout that you see here, the new system collects water from the new parking lot, from the community center, as well as the existing drainage system, which is in the existing employee parking lot, heads south-southwest, and then discharges to a pump station in the southwest corner of the DPW building. What we've asked the applicant to do is add a weir structure and a mechanical separation structure prior to the downstream pump station, which will filter, detain, and essentially collect all the runoff from the entire site prior to discharging into the existing system. That's kind of the crux of where we're at here. So I'm just going to read the township discussion points, which I just kind of went through, but I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. So in my letter, it reads, prior to the submittal of the updated plans, the township and the applicant had several conversations about consolidating the overall stormwater management for both the proposed and existing systems. Information on the existing pump station did not determine a metered value that could be used to determine if runoff was being detained the proper amount of time. Thus, it was determined that the entire contributing system would need to be accounted for and detained per township standards. The applicant would be responsible for detaining all flow upstream of the pump station for the required time per the township standards. The assumption was made that the existing swale and detention ponds between the soccer fields south of the splash pad were functional and the flow from those areas did not need to be considered. Based on this criteria, the applicant has proposed a single larger pond to accommodate the incoming flow. The pond will be a dry pond, which is also acceptable by the township. Under our comments, while combining the runoff from the existing and proposed systems, the applicant did not include a weir structure to meter the flow. But instead assumed that the existing pump station was the metering device. The township did not have the information for flow capacity for the pump station and will require the metering to be done upstream of the pump station. The township will be replacing the pump station at a future project and wants excess flow to be routed to the new detention pond. The applicant shall include the design of the weir structure with the proper allowable discharge rate downstream of the mechanical structure. The next three comments essentially all are based on that description of what will be required. The applicant, so the plans that you received did not show a weir structure, essentially, which meters flow to be backflow and detained in the detention pond. The applicant presumed that the outfall, the pump station, the final outflow was the metering structure, but it cannot be considered the metered structure. So in conversations with the applicant and in iterations over the last week since our letter was written, we have discussed with them, and the applicant's engineer has submitted preliminary sketches as to what the structure would be and how it would function. Based on the conversations we've had with them, we feel that the preliminary layout or design that they're proposing is acceptable, and we believe that we can make this work without changing any layout of the site other than the fence, as Director Power talked about, on the south side of the DPW building. So I'm going to finish my letter and then we can discuss more. Going to paving and grading, we had asked a question about the existing proposed curb on the east side of the parking lot, whether it was supposed to be poured. or it was going to be removed, and the applicant responded that the intention of the proposed curb on the east side of the parking lot is to be poured once the existing pavement is saw cut. And that's demonstrated in the demolition plans. The applicant will be required to get a soil erosion and sedimentation control plan prior to final construction. And so I'll read my recommendation from our letter, and then we can have further discussion. Fishbeck has reviewed the engineering aspects of the final site plan for the community center project. At this time, we recommend the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval based on the engineering aspects of the project, subject to the comments and conditions in the above letter being met. The stormwater management and detention pond design is the main aspect of design that will need to be worked out with the township and the engineer prior to getting final construction and approval. It is not anticipated that any of the comments or conditions listed above will impact the final layout or site design when finalized, sans the fence and the impact to the existing DPW lot. The applicant will be required to submit final issued for construction plan sets for approval by the township and engineering prior to moving forward to the pre-construction phase of the project. And that's all that I have for now, and I'm sure you will have questions. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Director Power, I believe we have a letter from the Van Buren Fire Department as well as one from the police department as well, attached.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the most recent letter from the fire department was actually with an interim plan, and there were no additional changes that they made since that time. But this letter was dated on April 26th, 2022, and the plans are approved with conditions that are stated in his letter. I'm just going to summarize those conditions that are left. He mentions that there is no need at this time to place a turnaround at the end of the lot, meaning the parking lot on the east side of the site where it's expanded. The parking lot does not meet the provisions for an access road, but they did find that they had adequate access to, they did not need to place the turnaround there. With regard to the water supply, a fire department connection, or FDC, has been relocated to the southeast corner of the building, and there will be two-way radio communication enhancement systems required for all new construction, and then there must be minimum radio signal strength for the fire department communications maintained at a level determined by the agency holding jurisdiction. So with those comments, understanding that some of those get addressed during building permit review, he did recommend, as you see in the letter, approval with conditions or exceptions.
Thank you, Director Power. I believe the letter from the police department is in there as well. It addresses the parking issue. Do you want to go through that real briefly?
Thank you for the reminder. Yep. So after the initial preliminary site plan review, we had requested the police department to provide a justification for some of the security measures that are affecting the design of this site because of the change to the circulation around the site. And his letter says that with the upcoming demolition, renovation, and addition of the new future community center, the Public Safety Department evaluated traffic flow patterns, parking, and overall parking lot security for all township employees. The police department's employee parking lot and all other township employee parking lots are currently open to the public, including the area where we park and store our on-duty and off-duty patrol cars, DPW trucks, and equipment. He states that, well, he agrees that the township needs to be open to the public and inviting. There are areas that must be designated for township employees only to promote a safe and secure environment. And he recommended that a fence for security purposes be erected around the police department's employee parking lot, along with a mechanical gate across the Quirk Road parking lot entrance and exit, which will provide a visual deterrent as well as a proper barrier to stop unnecessary general public access to where all township employees park their personal vehicles. And it will also provide better security for marked patrol vehicles, DPW trucks, and equipment that is stored and utilized in the area. So the police chief supported the in a nutshell, supported the security measures that were taken that caused the design changes.
Thank you, Director Power. Do we have any questions, comments, or discussion from any of the commissioners?
I have a question. I guess I want to talk about stormwater. I've seen a lot of stormwater. You're making the stormwater pond bigger, so it's coming more south. Will it interfere with any of the soccer fields that are there?
No, so if you, based on the diagram that's there, it's not coming further south very much as to where you see it up there.
It's a loop that's going the other way?
It's kind of headed east towards the base where the baseball diamond used to be.
Okay, so,
Right.
So now will be closer to the outdoor arena area?
Correct.
Is
Yes.
this it's supposed to be dry. I take it will not be fenced.
Correct.
So it will be leveled, because now we're gonna have kids in that area. And if there's any water there, they're gonna find that awful appealing.
So it is designed to be a dry detention pond. The design parameters are that it needs to hold excess flow for 48 to 72 hours, and then it will discharge back through the system. So during rain events and after, there could be up to, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it could be up to 2 feet of water. It will be flat on the bottom. It will have side slopes of, walkable side slopes of 1-on-6, as they call them. And that was the main crux is the township standards require a wet detention pond, require a permanent pool.
Right.
However, based on the proximity of the pond, the depth of the existing storm sewer system, and the design of the system itself, a wet pond was not desirable nor needed. And thus, because it's not a wet pond, because it doesn't have a permanent pool, a standard fence is not required. So could there be a time when, after a large storm event, there's 1 to 2 feet of water in the pond, and then the next morning it is a nice sunny day and there are people out there, that there could be 1 to 2 feet of water in the pond? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I do know when the other pond was there and they had to pump it, it was being pumped out onto Quirk Road, and then we had a big fountain going out there. So I'm sure that's what you're talking didn't work properly. So hopefully that will be taken care of.
So yeah, one of the issues with the existing system comes from the pump station, which is the outlet structure that the pond currently discharges into. It currently has, or it's supposed to have, 2 functioning pumps, one of which we just, when working with the DPW department, just found out that one of the pumps is not functioning currently, but the other one is functioning properly. But the size of the existing pond and the way that it was configured sometimes wasn't working properly. So if they did need to pump it, or if the pump failed, then the pond would overflow into Quirk Road and then head north and west. The purpose of the new larger pond in the new system is so that we don't have that overflow, so that it can detain water for the proper amount of time. And we will work with we're going to work with the DPW and the Water and Sewer Director to finalize the pump station upgrade as part of the next kind of phase of the project. It was determined that the community center project would essentially detain all the water going into that pump station. So anything that they have to deal with, plus the existing, would be detained properly. And then as a separate issue that is not part of the community center project would be handled internally from the Water and Sewer Department to fix that pump so that it functions properly based on the design of the community center pond.
Right. I'm still a little concerned with how close it's gonna be to the outdoor area. It's also gonna tie in to some extent to the splash pad, not that close because there is that drop down. But, I don't know the answer, and I hope that you folks do, but that's my concern.
So the one thing that we could, the shape of the pond and the proximity of the pond to the new community center area is not set in stone. That is more, I guess, would be more of an aesthetic preference from either the planning commission or the designers as to the proximity of where it is relative to the community center and the outdoor area. Really what we typically are concerned with is the size, to make sure the volume of the pond is correct and that the area of the inlets and outlets are functioning properly. If you see on this diagram in the bottom right-hand corner, so this black dot right there,
Right?
that is the current inlet from the splash pad area, from the detention ponds, basins on the soccer fields, and essentially all the flow from the south half of the pond. So that will flow in on that side. So that area there needs to be maintained, but the aesthetic and the extension of the pond to the east could be worked out with the applicant and the architect, the landscape architect, to buffer the area, I guess, whether with landscaping or push that and mold it a little bit differently so that it is not so close to the the proposed outdoor performance area. But that would be something I think the planning consultant and Director Power would maybe want to weigh in on as well. But the functionality of it is currently, as designed, works.
Through the chair.
Yes, Director Power.
Maybe I can ask Paul a question that might clarify some of this too, from a aesthetic and functionality standpoint of how the overall site kind of works. Paul, is it fair to say that if the pond is functioning properly, it will be dry most of the time when it's not immediately after a rain event or not a few days after a rain event?
Yes, well, we haven't had much rain in the last 6 weeks. It would more than likely be dry in the majority of the area. Now, there is the use of the splash pad that does, when it's hot out, gets used. So essentially what you'd see is between the inlet that's on the southeast corner of the pond and then that outlet that's in the northwest corner of the pond, you would get some water, probably as you'd see out there today. You'd get a little bit of low-level water or even some muddy conditions down there just from the basic flow. But in general, within 48 hours of a storm, and it depends on the size of the storm as well, you should get dry conditions within that area of the pond.
So now the bottom dark spot was where from a splash pad and that, where is it going to enter that basin from, like that back part of the community center? Where will that enter that pond?
Dan, can we show the little description or the sketch that we had?
It's upside down, isn't it? Let's try this.
So let me come up there, Dan.
I guess to add, well, Paul comes up here. I guess my other point of questioning, if this will be dry most of the time, one thing to consider is with a conventional wet pond with a permanent pool, you might consider the impact that that would have on the overall function of the site as an open space and a place where you'd expect people to be kind of moving around freely. That was one of the considerations that justified staff's recommendation to go with this dry pond design, because with the shallower slope, the absence of a fence and the absence of a permanent pool, you're kind of allowing the pond to blend more in with the site kind of as it is today, but just functioning hopefully better than it does today. So I guess I will just make that as one of the staff discussion points we've had over the recent months.
So if you see in this diagram here, this point here is where the convergence of the two systems comes in. I don't know if I can zoom this at all, Dan. So
This is the north end of the pond by the DPW yard, correct?
So you'll see, this is kind of the DPW fence line here. There's a line just that goes kind of through this yellow portion that is the existing storm sewer. This manhole right here, you can see down here, this is the proposed system coming in right here. This line right here is the proposed system coming to and connecting to the existing system. When it hits this manhole, it discharges into the existing system that comes this direction and outlets to this structure right here, which is the existing pump station. What the proposed weir structure should look like, and what we have been in discussions with the applicant on, is that water will come down to this area. It will hit this red circle, which will be a proposed weir structure, which then will, in low flow times, will just flow through and discharge into the existing system. When that flow reaches the maximum allowable flow outside to allow, out into the pump station, it will backflow into, let me move this back, sorry. It will backflow into the pond through this red structure and then fill the pond down here. And as that pond fills and during rain events, after the rain event is over, it will then come back in the same pipe, come back here, and then discharge out this direction. So to answer your question, Commissioner Budd, is as flow comes in from the south, you can't see now, but as flow comes in from the south from the splash pad down here, it will eventually run into the new system and then discharge this direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Jar.
Is the current pond behind Township Hall dry because it's broken?
Somewhat.
Is the new pond the dry pond? That's a technical term meaning it's designed to be mostly dry, correct?
So the existing pond is designed to be a dry pond.
It is designed to be a dry
Yes,
pond.
it is not designed to be a wet pond. It's not dry because it's broken. It is designed. Does it function how it's supposed to? Not necessarily, but it is designed currently to be a dry pond.
In the new design with the dry pond, what is the surface, the bottom layer of that pond composed of? Is it gravel? Is it grass? Is it mud?
It should be grass.
Okay.
One right now.
The
is
one right
grass.
now is
Is
mud.
grass.
Is grass or mud?
It's grass.
Is
Well,
grass.
It depends.
So, and that's,
Most time it's grass.
Okay.
there is an argument, or sometimes the issue with dry ponds is during wet and rainy seasons, and when you get a lot of rain, It is just a muddy surface. If you go to any, even your own yard, right? If you have a low spot in your yard and you continuously get rain, it's going to be mushy and a little bit muddy, and you don't want to utilize it. So I wouldn't consider this an area that can be of use. I would not consider anything within the parameters or the perimeter of the pond as a useful area, other than, as Director Power mentioned, it gives a feeling of openness versus a fenced-off area that is confined.
So when it's functioning correctly, if there's a rain event, it should, within 48 hours, there should be no more standing water. The surface should look like grass, because the idea is 2 days worth of rain isn't going to kill the grass. And the idea is that it's not supposed to be a muddy, sloppy, put on your hip waders type pond. This is really supposed to look like a field most of the time. Did I understand that right?
Correct.
All right. I wasn't clear. You don't get to see in the black and white drawings what the surface what the surface is, and I'm glad Commissioner Budd brought it up, because I didn't realize that that's what dry pond meant. I think it's the first time I've seen one of these.
Through the chair, just to talk about a procedural item, we do have we have one member that left recently. We do have limited attendance tonight. Just as kind of a procedural item, I know that there's a member that has to leave fairly soon here, and so this may be a discussion topic that we want to keep developing, or if you feel comfortable, it could be something that we could bring back with an informational session once there's a little bit more development on the pond. But I would, if possible, encourage you to decide if you want to kind of conditionally keep discussing the possibility of a conditional final site plan approval, or breaking this out and at least giving some direction on the plan, because I know one of our members is going to have to leave very soon here.
Okay, thank you, Director Power.
That's all because there's a quorum issue. I just want to reiterate that.
Thank you. That being what Director Power said, do we have any other comments, or do we want to table this and come back, or are we ready to take action? I know there's some concerns regarding the shape. Is that something we want to look at, asking to have it relooked at for safety concerns? Or?
I don't know.
I would suggest, if you are inclined to do that, give some direction as to whether, that's an issue you think, if that's the only issue that you think needs to be addressed in a future session, because I know there's a timing issue with the overall design and bidding of the project as well. So probably would help the applicant to know if there's positive direction on this, pending some final questions being answered, so they could proceed with their process.
It would be my recommendation also that you do grant final site plan approval, subject to an update being provided on the detention pond shape, which can be given as an official update by Director Power at your next meeting. But it'll at least get the applicant moving forward with their bid and getting the project done.
Yeah, because I have no idea what it needs to be to do what it wants to do. I just want to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do, because there's going to be too many kids in that area.
So the recommended motion probably, it would be a good idea to say final site plan approval, subject to the design and the safety considerations of the detention pond being finalized by the township, and an update provided to the planning commission. So you're comfortable in what is being done. It's a good point. Safety is a very important consideration, especially with little kids running around, but it'll keep the project moving, and that is something, it's not immediately going to be built, so we can make sure that the safety considerations are in place.
Right.
So, just a question on it. Is that something that we would want staff making the final decision and giving us an update on it, or is it something we would like to have brought back as part of the plan on a couple weeks out?
For me personally, I don't have any idea what shape it ought to be in. I'm counting on these guys to tell me what kind of shape it's in. I want them to be sure that that's the best thing they got going. So I guess, like Vidya said, we could approve it and then bring it back to us. But how do you see it?
We will make sure that Fishbeck does all the engineering and make sure that if the pond shape is changed along with the applicant, the pond is still functional, and Director Power and myself will make sure that the safety considerations and the aesthetic considerations are still maintained. So if you feel comfortable with that, we can work it out and bring you an update.
I feel comfortable with that.
I think that sounds reasonable.
I would agree.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jar?
if we don't have any more planning commission discussion, I would like to see whether or not the public comment is available for this,
Yes.
if anyone has anything to say.
Do we have anybody in the audience tonight that would like to speak regarding this agenda item? If you could please step up to the mic, identify.
Give your name and address at the mic. No.
Director Power, do we have anybody on Zoom?
The Zoom, still.
Given
Still
our-
holding out.
Excuse me?
Still holding out for a Zoom participant tonight. I'm hoping.
All right, seems
Yeah.
we have nobody has any other questions, we're ready to take action on this agenda item.
Mr. Chair, I would at this time move to grant the applicant, Stephen Gettard, on behalf of the owner, Van Buren Charter Township, the final site plan approval to construct the renovations in a gymnasium addition adjacent to the existing municipal building, renovations to the existing building, and the construction of associated pavement and utilities at the site located at 46425 Tyler Road, based on the analysis and subject to the conditions in the Fishback letter dated July 8th, 2022, Van Buren Fire dated April 26th, 2022. I believe there was a letter of staff dated, a revised July letter from staff, noting the feedback and concerns discussed this evening and subject to an update on the design and safety concerns of the dry pond, which are to be presented to this commission in a future meeting.
Do we have support?
Support?
I got a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Barr. Do we have any comments or discussion regarding the motion? Seems we have none. Could we have a roll call, please?
Brian Kelly,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Callie Barr,
Yes.
Sherry Budd.
Yes.
All right, and the motion is approved, and final site plan is approved for this project. Going to kind of speed up a little bit. Are we, okay, Commissioner Jar's got to go. Since our next agenda item is the gasoline filling and gasoline service station amendment, I believe we're looking at taking an action on that. Is this something that we want to look at tabling until, or is that?
Yes,
Yeah.
table this as well, and that's, from staff standpoint, not an issue. This is a not particularly time-sensitive item. We can always bring this back at a later meeting.
Okay. So we need to do, I believe, a motion to table agenda item number 4. But we can't approve it because we don't have.
Just state for the record, through the chair, that this item is withdrawn by staff.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Accept it. Yep.
All right, so we will have that on a later meeting then. We'll remove that from the agenda. That brings us up to general discussion and updates. Director Power, do you have anything for?
We'll be meeting on July 27th. That is the public hearing for the Sumter Road corridor plan, the sub-area plan for the Sumter Road corridor, as well as the public hearing for the zoning ordinance amendments that go along with that plan. The public hearing has been notified, notice has been provided for the public hearing. There are documents up on the website for view, and working on getting the cleaned up version of the zoning text up on the website for view for that meeting. But everything else is, as we stated it on our last meeting, it's just now we're reopening it for formal public comment, and we will consider it again on the 27th. So that's what at least most of the agenda will be occupied by, if not all of the agenda on the 27th.
All right, well, thank you so much. Is there anything from any of the commissioners for general discussion? Anything from anybody in the audience this evening? No? Director Power, did we get our one person contributing from Zoom yet?
No, we do not have anybody, I'm sorry to say.
All right, thank you so much. That being said, I believe we need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Bud. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passed or adjourned. Thank you.
I learned a lot about ponds tonight.
I got a little concerned of whether we could actually adjourn our meeting.
No, we would have to be here. We didn't have quorum. to
We did not have
adjourn.
quorum to adjourn our
have to
meeting,
pay
so
out.
we,
Detention and retention. I kept using them interchangeably. And John would tell me they're not the same. I'm like, detention. No, retention. No, detention.
So much for that.
Retention,
It was
detention.
almost 1 year. And John would say they're not the same. I'm like, no, D. So finally I got my head wrapped around it. Retain, detain. Okay.
they always have to bring the big,
Good night.
So,
my concern is that they've had two drownings recently of just,
We went through without a quorum.
they've had two
At 7
drownings
p.m.
in
next
5
Wednesday.
and 6 year olds.
in fact, anybody who wants to go,
That would be awesome.
you can take it. We just need to figure out a night that works.
It's gonna be holding 2.5 feet of water, and you have it that close to